Thank you very much. Nice to have all of you here. I've been given this document to read. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you to this annual general meeting of members of the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants. In order to encourage enhanced member participation in annual meetings, SAICA employs an electronic solution which enables members to participate in the voting process through an online solution. Registration and proxy voting processes on the electronic platform were opened before 9 on the 5th of June 2018, closed at 9 on Sunday 24 June 2018. Only those persons who have not already cast proxy votes will be able to cast their votes today on the e-voting platform. Electronic devices, mobile phones, iPads, laptops can be used to cast your e-votes. SAICA has already provided laptops in room 26 and 27. Someone will show you where those are for voting purposes. E-voting guidelines are available in hard copy at the welcome desk, in the foyer here in the meeting room as well, and at the voting station set up by SAICA. And for those participating remotely, they are available on the SAICA website. Please note that with the pre-2016 paper-based system, there were instances where spoiled votes were submitted and therefore disqualified. However, the stringent process applied to the e-voting system eliminates the possibility of submitting a spoiled vote. I would like to extend a special welcome to all SAICA members joining this AGM via webcast. Webcast attendees are requested to submit their comments or questions which will be presented to me during the meeting. Responses to online questions will be addressed after questions from members on the floor have been addressed. For those of us attending this AGM physically, please use the roaming microphones to ensure that persons attending via webcast are able to hear and follow proceedings. Are there any questions in the room with regards to this? Any questions on the webcast? As the necessary quorum is present, I declare this meeting duly constituted. Can we note any apologies? Any apologies? So, just a slight amendment on the agenda. There have been a number of developments in the profession that I thought it would be appropriate to address right up front. The board has also directed me that the number of issues that the board considers as burning issues that they would like that we deal with up front as the board. So, as part of this, maybe let me start by just talking about our views on the profession. The chartered accountancy profession in South Africa is arguably facing its toughest period of its 25 years of existence. The situation that the profession finds itself in, both in South Africa and internationally, is completely unprecedented. The issues around state capture and the corporate scandals, individually, these issues would have been significant. But to have them all happening simultaneously is completely unprecedented. It is almost as if we are facing a perfect storm, both internationally and locally. These seem to be threatening the relevance of the profession, the value and the reputation of our profession. Some would even go as far as saying it is even threatening the very existence of this profession. What this crisis has in so many ways also done is served to highlight the deficiencies in the constitution of SAICA, the structure of SAICA, the governance of our organization. We need to address all these in order to safeguard the profession and that we ensure that we emerge out of this stronger after we've dealt with these challenges. So I will just go then through a number of the issues that we considered as burning issues as a board. One is the constitutional review of SAICA. SAICA has initiated a governance review of SAICA in its entirety, and the formulation and the constitution of the board will form part of this review. This governance review will be done by specialist advisors on corporate governance. The committee responsible for this review will be tasked to prioritize the completion of this review within the next financial year. The areas that this constitutional review will be addressing will cover some of the following: the representative structure of the organization, the board composition, the tenure of board members, the disciplinary structures of SAICA, and we will ensure that throughout this process a mechanism is developed to ensure that members are able to participate, to provide inputs as the review of the Constitution progresses. The second area is on discipline and ethics. As a starting point, I think it is important for me to reiterate to all members that are present here today that SAICA takes allegations of behavior that breaches professional code of conduct extremely seriously. SAICA is currently investigating more than 100 cases as outlined in our annual report. These will be investigated and will hold members accountable, or will hold members to account. All CAs are bound by the Code of Professional Conduct. As such, are treated equally and are subject to the same rules. I also need to explain the fact that the board does not have a role when it comes to disciplinary processes. Disciplinary processes are managed by the Professional Conduct Committee, and the Professional Conduct Committee interacts directly with management in terms of this. And the other explanation that I needed to give members is in terms of Rule 19.2 of the SAICA Code. Rule 19.2 prohibits SAICA from investigating or disciplining members or members who are registered auditors for acts that they may have incurred in the performance of an audit. That is EBA's jurisdiction. Once EBA has concluded its findings and has decided on an appropriate sanction on a member, the Professional Conduct Committee will then determine whether any of those breaches indicate items that need to be considered by the Professional Conduct Committee. So you all be aware that SAICA has amended its bylaws to allow the publication of information on disciplinary processes initiated against members. Again, the responsibility and the right to decide which members need to be published or which disciplinary processes need to be published rests with management and not with the board. Due to the complexity and the public interest and the volume of complaints, the board has approved the creation of a specialist compliance division within SAICA in order to help to speed up the investigation and disciplinary processes. Further steps that SAICA management believes still need to be taken include the following: changes to the SAICA constitution in order to allow the publication of the outcome of the disciplinary hearings in line with worldwide Chartered Accountancy Institute's best practice, as well as what we would consider to be in the public interest. So that's all I wish to say on disciplinary hearings. And I also wanted to talk about the SAICA position on mandatory audit firm rotation. Mandatory audit firm rotation, there was a process where there was a lot of debate around whether mandatory audit firm rotation was the appropriate instrument to introduce to address the issues that had been identified. SAICA participated actively in those processes, and at the time, SAICA felt that mandatory audit firm rotation, at least there was not enough evidence that had been presented to show that mandatory audit firm rotation was the appropriate solution. But SAICA also respects that the regulator has the right to introduce mandatory audit firm rotation. So having had the debates, having had the argument, the regulator has decided to introduce mandatory audit firm rotation, and SAICA has no intention to challenge this any further. So it has accepted the position of mandatory audit firm rotation. So in this regard, SAICA is not supportive of the court challenge that has been initiated from the East Rand District Association. Moving on to talk about the Ntsebeza inquiry. As members will be aware, SAICA does not have investigative capacity. It does not have powers of subpoena as a professional body. So it relies on other institutions for these functions, and once there's been evidence and findings from there, it then gets fed into our professional conduct committee. Given the public nature and the lack of clarity on the number of people implicated in the KPMG matter, the SAICA management proposed to the board that an independent inquiry be set up to help expedite the process of determining whether there were members within KPMG that needed to be referred to the Professional Conduct Committee. It is important for me to again clarify that SAICA is not investigating KPMG. SAICA does not have the ability to discipline firms. SAICA can only discipline its members. So the Ntsebeza inquiry is investigating the SAICA members who happen to be at KPMG. The timing of the Ntsebeza inquiry was initially due to be completed on the 30th of April. A request for an extension was submitted to the board, and the board granted that extension to the 30th of June 2018. We have since been contacted by the Ntsebeza inquiry suggesting that there may be further delays. Management is engaging with the Ntsebeza inquiry to establish the nature of such delays, and whether there's anything that we can do to ensure that the deadlines are met. The next issue is the issue of KPMG resignation. So since about September 2017, the audit committee has on several occasions considered whether it was still appropriate to retain KPMG as auditors of SAICA. The board also considered the same and on each of these occasions concluded that what was appropriate was to allow the due processes to conclude their investigations and their disciplinary processes before we could make a decision on retaining KPMG or not. In May 2018, KPMG, considering the progress of the Ntsebeza inquiry, decided that it was concerned with its independence relative to SAICA as well as to the Ntsebeza inquiry, and the board accepted KPMG's resignation. We are currently, the audit committee has set up a special committee which is currently in the process of appointing new external auditors. They've shortlisted 2 external auditors, and a decision will be made shortly in terms of our new external auditor. The next issue is the issue of the CEO secondment to the Commission, to the Deputy Chief Justice's inquiry on state capture. So it is important to say up front that for the board, this was not an easy decision. As a board, we were aware of the many challenges that were facing SAICA itself as an organization. We were aware of the many challenges that were facing the profession as a profession and how much we needed our CEO at that stage. But we had to balance this with our duty to the country. We had to balance this with our duty as decreed in our SAICA constitution of public interest. So in balancing both these, we acceded to the judge's request for the secondment of the CEO. Initially, this secondment was envisaged to be a 6-month secondment, but very soon after Terence arrived at the inquiry, he and the judge indicated to us that they now thought this would be a much longer process. And given the fact that Terence's contract was due to expire end of January, the board then decided to start a process of looking for a permanent replacement to the CEO, and that process is underway. We, in the meantime, are grateful to have Fanisa Lamula as our acting CEO. It is important to note to the members that while Terence is on secondment, his cost of being CEO or his earnings are not being borne by the organization. The Department of Justice will reimburse us for the full cost of his employment. The last issue I wish to address is an issue around the forensic investigation that we would have reported on in our report. So following the introduction of an ethics hotline within SAICA, a number of issues were reported by employees. The board then decided to task the audit committee with the responsibility of commissioning a forensic report into those reported issues, and PwC was appointed to conduct the forensic report. This forensic report was recently completed, and it is on the agenda to be considered by the board immediately after this AGM. It is important to state that there were no adverse findings against executive management of SAICA. There are a number of leak reports. There have been a number of reports of a leaked report. So it is important that I, from a SAICA perspective, tell you about the officials. There is a PwC preliminary report which was presented to us in March. That report was incomplete. There were a number of processes that still needed to be completed by PwC which had not been completed at that stage. The full report which I've referred to is now a complete report with recommendation which the board will consider. There is a leaked report which draws on some of the items that were taken from the preliminary report and then goes further to make recommendations that are completely unfounded and seem to be baseless relative to where the allegations were at that stage. So the board, once it's completed its process around this formal report, will then look to say, were members of the board implicated in any way in distributing these leak reports, or were members of management involved in any way? So that's the process that we will be undertaking. In closing, in the next 12 months, SAICA will be focusing on the following. We're going to be focusing on restoring trust in the profession. Working with our members and other structures, we have to visibly demonstrate what this profession stands for, and that those that have been involved in damaging our profession do not belong amongst us. SAICA, in the question of public interest, SAICA will be working on ensuring that all of us as practitioners, irrespective of what roles we happen to occupy, remember that by joining this profession, we have committed ourselves to public interest first, including above our own financial interest. We need to rededicate ourselves to our values. We recognize that this will take time and that we will need the members to commit to this renewal process. We need to rededicate ourselves to the values that make this profession what it is. And this needs to be done by each and every one of us. So members, thank you very much for affording me time to share this with you. I will then go back to my seat there so that we can proceed with the more formal part of the AGM. When we get to under general, there will be an opportunity to ask questions on this address as well as any other aspects that relate to SAICA.